All right, today I want to go over the next part of the crab mech rigging thing. This is an example of that guy animated, so you can kind of see what some of the controls are going to be able to do. You may want to adjust the textures on this, the lighting, the whole thing. This rendering took about 4 minutes a frame, and this is about 600 and some minutes. And then he walks away. And that's one camera of, I think, 4 I had. There we go. So this is sort of where we left off last time. I did figure out the issue with getting this joint to rotate correctly. There's always a trick, there's always something that you'll encounter regardless of how many times you've done an animation. So ideally what I need to have is a joint that when I rotate it, it doesn't separate from the hinges like it was doing last time. So I'm going to grab this piece, I'm going to unparent it, and I'm going to reset this so that we can see that as I did it. So let me click that and delete and delete. Okay. So I don't recall if I made a joint up here. This joint doesn't do anything. It was just a trial thing. I could actually delete that too. It doesn't matter. So I need to have some joint that is right here that will flow or direct itself right in that same direction as this flipper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this piece. It doesn't matter which one, just one of those. I'm going to isolate it, and then I'm going to create a joint that would go from this tip to that tip. And if I do that, I should have a joint, one of those, that will actually rotate the correct way. So rigging, create joints. I'm going to hold down V and snap there, hold down V and snap there. Now the first one I clicked, this is the one that's going to be able to rotate correctly, and you can already see that's working a lot better than it did before. This one I don't need, I can just delete it. So that's just a little trick to be able to create that joint. So now I have it. So now to get it to connect to the rest of these, I just shift click that one and then hit P to parent it, and now it's connected. So now that joint goes to that. So now I'll do the same thing on the other side. Click that, isolate it, create joints. And the other one I started at the bottom, so I'm going to do the same thing, bottom one first, and then the top one. And then I can delete the top joint. I just need that bottom one to work. And then I just shift click and then parent. So now I have joints that obviously this would go like that, and then these joints would rotate perfectly in the direction I needed them to. Cool. So now I just need to parent stuff back in. So this one is going to go to that joint. A little shortcut, instead of selecting stuff in here, so instead of finding right tail flipper and then shift clicking this and then hitting P, what you can do is if you click on a piece, hit the up arrow, that will automatically select that group, and then I can shift click and then hit P to parent. There we go, and that works. Oops. So I can preview this just by going there and seeing that it definitely stays locked on that hinge. And the same thing here. Now, I like to add an extra joint right here just so I have something to select a little bit easier. This one doesn't matter so much. I'm just going to put a joint right like that. And then I'll just duplicate it and swap its X to a negative. There we go. And then same thing, just reparent that into the structure. Now, if my joints got disconnected, that means I parented it the wrong direction. Joints can only have one direct parent. So if I were to, let's say, click this and shift click that and parent it, you'll see how it got disconnected from this. Or if I clicked this piece of geometry, then click that joint and parented it. Oops. That didn't work. Let me try this one and that one. Oh, sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing. This one. Haha. Nope. Why aren't you braking? You should be braking. All right, well, just trust me. That's what it would do. All right. So all my joints are in place. My next step in this is I need to create a way to control things. Now, definitely, once everything is parented, I am able to grab stuff and move things around. That would definitely work. The problem becomes that it's very easy to accidentally do stuff like that and break our rig. So we want to, just like we had the stick rig, create controls that allow us only to do what we intended to do with this. So this part you can be a little bit more creative with as far as how you create these. Typically you want to create either a NURB circle or some sort of piece of geometry that you're going to use for those things. If you looked at the Andy rigs, you'll see there was a mix of them. Sometimes you would see curves, sometimes you would see a piece of geometry that you're selecting for those things. So I'll show a couple different ones. So if I created a circle and made that bigger, then I have a circle there, and that could be a control. If I go to create type, there it goes, and I type a letter here like C for crab, and then I go to geometry, there it is, and create curves. That will also give me a curve that I could use if I wanted to create a letter that would be used as a controlling point. Sometimes you'll see those. And then we could also create a piece of geometry. Any piece you do, don't leave it super high resolution and stick to the basics, cubes and spheres, okay? I really wouldn't need a torus for anything unless there was a specific reason to have a torus. So I'm going to knock down my divisions in this too, like that many, like 5 and 5 seems good, or 4 and 5 or whatever. Okay, so just keep them low. Okay. Now, I'm going to create controls all over. These are just the kind that you can create. Now, when we render our stuff out, I'll leave the C here too in case we decide we want to use that. Whenever we render it, we don't want to have to hide all the controls. We want those to automatically be hidden, not renderable the whole bit. If I threw a light in here right now, oops, not that. Lights, sky dome. I hit the render button. There we go. We can see the C. We can see the sphere. We don't see the curves. Okay, so typically people can go with curves. You don't have to do another thing about it. They'll just be invisible when you render. But if you want to use a piece of geometry, we're going to do a little bit more to that. Okay. In the attribute editor for that piece of geometry in its shape node, under render stats, I'm going to turn all these off. Okay, basically like I'm turning off any option for it to be visible. We didn't get into it in this class, and we don't really get into it in the modeling class too much, but you can actually have an object not be visible in the rendering, but actually have its reflection or its shadow still visible. Vice versa, you can have an object that is visible but not have a reflection or shadow if you decided to do stuff like that. So I'm turning off all of those so it can't have any of that. I'm also going into the Arnold area and turning these off here too. Opaque, diffuse, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so nothing should be rendered there. Now, I don't want this to get in the way of my stuff, so let's say that I'm going to use this as my controller for my crab, and that's kind of like, you know, it's in the way, I can't see him. So inside this same area, somewhere in here, we have object display, and then we have drawing overrides. And what these will do is, this is wireframe, this is shaded. I can tell one object to be wireframe while the rest of it is still shaded. So I'm going to say enable overrides and then turn shading off. So now it's shaded, or it's in wireframe. I can also turn off texturing. I could tell it not to be visible during playback so that when I do hit play, it won't play. Maybe I have to do a play blast. I don't know, I just leave that one on. We can also change the color. So if I go here to RGB and I pick a color, and then I click off, now it's red. So now again, it's kind of just like the Andy rig was. It's easy for us to discern which items are part of the left side or the right side if we assign colors to it. Typically I use the red for right. It's easy to remember because it will start with R. Do whatever you want. Cool, so that's one way we can do that. We can also go into here, there it is. And over here in the outliner, you'll see there's a bunch of stuff. It's hard to tell what's what. If I click on the sphere and I say use outliner color and I pick that same red, Come on. Use outliner color. Yes, outliner color red. It should be showing that as red. Visibility. Nope. Oh, there's the hide on playback one. Yep, so now I hit play and then it disappears. I don't know why it's not showing up red. It should be. When I open my other file, it will be. Let me try this. Now the same thing for this circle, we have the outliner color, so we can click that. Nope, it still doesn't want to show it. And then we have drawing overrides, enable, and then we can choose RGB and then pick that red color. Okay, so those are different ways that obviously you can create your controls. You could also go into Illustrator, draw out some paths, make sure there's just one solid path, save it as an Illustrator 8 file, and then you can go to Adobe Illustrator Object and bring in just the curves. So if you had something specific you drew out, you could do it that way. When I did the stick animation or the stick rig, all those curves were drawn in Illustrator and then brought in. Okay, so then I need to place these things in areas where I would be using them to control other items. So looking at what I would want to control, I have down here where this hand is. I want to have a control for this hand. So I'm going to put a control there. I'm going to duplicate this. I'll slide this onto this side. Okay, so now I have one for each hand. I do want one for the eye, so I'm going to just use this one for the eye. You want these to be lined up as best as possible. So I'm snapping these to where like the center of the eye is, so just using V and snapping it, and then bringing it out, and then rotating it into position. There we go. Okay. These are probably a little bit too big. I'm going to scale those down. I actually use cubes in mine, but for this I'll use that. You could also use locators. So locators don't render, and again you could obviously utilize those. I'm going to snap it to this joint. I'm going to try to snap it to the joint. I'm going to hide polygons and then snap it to the joint. There we go. Nope, come on, just get right there. There you go. And then back to polygons. Move it up. That's for the elbow, just like the Andy rig, like which direction is the elbow facing. I'm going to duplicate it. I'll swap the X to be a negative, so I have one on that side. I'll need some controls up here. So I'm going to go and grab a NURB circle. That's a square. Don't use the NURB square. That's like 4 different square or curves. And I'm going to cut this in pieces. So I'm going to go to curve point, tell it where I want this to be cut, and then I go to curves and say detach. There we go. And then I can just click that piece and then delete it. So I'm rotating it. Oops, that's not the correct direction. There we go. And again, making sure it's lined up perfectly. So this needs to be right there. That needs to be there. Okay, it doesn't matter, like this could be pretty much, anywhere around here, but that looks like it's good. Okay. Same thing here, I'm going to duplicate this, position it over here. That looks good. I'm going to turn off my geometry again, just so I can snap it right to that joint. Just makes it a little bit easier to see. I'll rotate it that way and then do the same thing for the other side. So negative. Over there. Okay. All right, so let's double check our settings here. So we have this one for the eye. I have this one for that hand. I have the elbow, elbow, hand, this, and this. Okay, so I need one more, which is one for the entire creature. I'm going to center pivot this, rotate it down, and then I'm going to unparent it because it's parented, and then I'll just reset all these things. It's way off. Let's move this there. And then I'm going to line it up with the ground. There we go. All right, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so those are all my controls. Now, as we move the crab thing, we have to consider what we want to move with it, okay? So as I move this forward, because that's going to be the controller to like the pelvis one, like to move the entire thing forward, back, rotate them, whatever, here's the eye one. So imagine we have a character and they're looking off to the side and they're seeing something, and as they're walking, they're just like keeping their eyes locked to that point. If it's not parented to him, that's what it's going to do, okay? That could be an advanced set of controls for the character to be able to switch between how you have it parented. We're not going to do that. We're just going to go with the straightforward way, okay? So I'm going to imagine that as I move him forward like this, I want this to also move forward with him. That way I have control of that eye thing as he's going. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to parent it to the middle joint. Okay. When I move him forward like this, do I want, you can see this doesn't move yet, but that will move eventually. When I grab that and move it, do I want the hands to also move forward? Okay. I'm going to say no on that one. As he's walking, I want his hands to be locked in place so I can move his hips forward basically and then move his legs individually, just like we had on our rig. So those ones will not be parented. These I do want, okay? I do want those parented so that way as he does move forward, his elbows will go with him. They won't stay lagging behind. So again, I'm going to parent this to that center joint. Okay. Here's another control we have right here. As he moves forward, I want that to go with it so I could easily grab it and rotate this so that it moves. So again, I parent it to that center joint. Okay. So far everything has been parenting it to that center joint. When we get into here, this is going to be a little bit different because as the tail rotates down like this, I want those curves to go with them. Okay. So what do you think I'm going to parent it to? Yeah, that joint there. That's the one that moves. That's the one it should be parented to. So click the joints. Parent. Parent. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to click this middle joint and just test it out. Make sure that as I move it, everything moves with it. Okay. This didn't, that's fine. I have to set that up a different way. But everything else, as far as the controls I wanted, are all moving with him. Oops, except this other leg. No, that leg still stay there. It's good. All right. Good. So now I need to do some housekeeping before I go any further. So every one of our controls, we should be able to reset it back to 0 and get it back to this position. Get him back to just his standard, you know, it's not a T pose, it's more like an M pose for this guy. That's what we would want. So I'm going to freeze transform each one of my controls. So I'm just clicking on them and then hitting G to redo that command. Now I'm doing it at this point because once they get parented, they actually will inherit some of the transformation information from the joints themselves. So if I were to take, let's say, this one and unparent it, you'll see how I get stuff in there. So let's say I froze transform it and then I parented it. Oops. Now it has stuff back in there. So typically you want to do all your parenting and then freeze your transforms and then you're good. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to do is I'm going to take the main root joint, shift click the C, and then parent it to that. And then I'll just double check all my controls, make sure they're all still zeroed out before I do anything further. All right, so that's good. At some point you want to go through and label your stuff. So this is my master controller. This is not the joint. Left hand, you know, the hand, foot, I don't know what you want to call it, just call it something. I think if you called it foot or called it hand, nobody would care. But try to get them the same thing. So if you call one hand, you call the other one hand. Oops, stop saying hand. left elbow. Now you may notice that my locators are a smidge rotated. Because the original joint in there is rotated, it does that. Just ignore it, it doesn't matter. When we move them, they're still going to move straight. So that's all we care about. Same thing here, we would go into this, give that a name, go into that, give that a name, give that a name. Let me save this as, just to see. I'm going to open up my one that I have them already named. Named. Where did you go? Oh, that's the different one. Sorry, wrong one. CrabMac jointed. I guess I didn't have one named. I thought I saved one named. All right, I will eventually get to that. All right, this one, left fliper. And remember, I'm calling these based on his direction, not my direction. Tail fin. Okay. All right, I think I have everything labeled inside here. Oh, I didn't do the eye. There we go. There we go. Okay. Right, so now everything is frozen transformed. Everything should be ready to actually start building the controls to actually function. So we're going to start off with the simplest ones, and then we'll work to the more complex ones. So first thing I want to be able to do is grab this somehow and have it move. My goal is that I want to be able to grab this and move it around and have that arm, leg, whatever, move with it, okay? So we have two choices. We have IK and we have FK. FK means I'm grabbing joints and rotating. This rig, I don't want to use that. I want to use IK. So I'm going to use IK. I click on the toppest joint, so the shoulder, and then I click on the bottomest joint, which is the wrist or hand or whatever you want to call it. So now if I were to grab this and move it, now I can move that joint around. Okay? Now this doesn't have a 0 spot. If you look at the Translate XYZ here, all this stuff, there's no 0 spot for it. That's why we created this. So if I still have that IK selected and I shift click that control and parent it, now I can just grab the control, move it around, and if I need to reset, I put it back to 0 and it goes back to where it was. Okay? Now I still need to control the elbow. So the elbow has to be able to move somehow. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to shift marquee this, and that will automatically grab that IK handle. And then I'm going to go to constrain pull vector. There it is. Okay, you'll see this little thing pop up. And now if I click on this locator and move it, now I have a control for the elbow. Okay, so if I needed to move this like so, I can move the hand up, grab this, push it back. If I need to reset, that goes back to 0. That goes back to 0. So now he's back to his default pose. Okay? So I'm going to mimic the same thing for the other side. And if it helps you to do it that way, then do it that way. It doesn't really matter how you rig the stuff. You just do it as you go along. Create the IK from the shoulder to the wrist. Shift click the control and parent the IK to that. Grab the locator, shift click the IK, constrain pull vector. So that works, and that works. Okay. Now I need to get the joints here, the locators here, to all function correctly. To make it a little bit simpler, I'm just going to go to, I guess I'm not going to. I'm going to try to isolate just those pieces, but I guess it's not going to let me do it. All right, so the trick with this one is I need this item to basically be stuck here. Okay, so think of an actual hydraulic, how it works. This end is always right there. This piece, this end is always right here. Now, the way that they connect is always pointing to the other one. So they're going to be stuck at the bases of each one, but they're going to be aimed at the other pieces across the way from it. Okay? So I need to make sure that I grab the group. So I'm going to grab the group. Its pivot is down here, so I'm just going to isolate this. And I'm going to put his pivot right where the joint is. So I don't know why I isolated it. Right where that locator is. So I'm going to show polygons off. There we go. And I'm going to move his pivot right there. Okay, that's locator is where it's going to be pivoting from and how it's going to be controlled. Show polygons. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, left forearm, and I'm going to lock it to this locator. So show polygons again. There's that, D and V, drag it over, and now it's stuck. Back to that. Okay, so that just moved the pivot. That's all that did. Now I'm going to grab the bicep. I'm going to click this first, control click the bicep, and then go to constrain point. Everything is here, everything is good. Now I'm going to click on this one and do the same thing. Click this, click the forearm, constrain point. Okay, now let's see where we're at. Click that, move it. So now they're moving with the pieces the way they should, but they're not aiming at the other piece. So now we need to get them to aim. So now I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to control click the bicep. So I click this one here, control click the bicep, and I'm going to do a constrain aim. And I'm going to make sure that I use maintain offset. That's not on by default. I have to click it and then hit add. Nothing changes. That's fine. It will change once we are done. Do the same thing here, but opposite. So grab the locator first, control click the left form hydraulic, constrain aim, maintain offsets on, add. So now we test, not that. And it works. Okay, now we could obviously go too far. That's what we have to, as animators, stop it from doing. Just be aware of that. Same thing this way. There is a limit to how far the crab can go. Now we could have done this a different way too. Like we could have actually had it, scaling as it's going, but for this assignment, this will work. So now I need to replicate that whole process over here. So I'm going to do it a bit quicker just so you can see. So I'm going to take these. I don't know why I went into that. I just want to click this. This is the forearm, so the forearm will be snapped there. The bicep will be snapped there. So I'm just moving their pivots. And then I'm going to grab this, control click bicep, and I'm just going to keep this menu up. There we go. Constrain point. Grab this, control click forearm, constrain point. Grab this, control click bicep, constrain aim with the offset still on. Grab this, control click forearm, aim. So now if we look at this and I grab that thing, that one works too. And again, this still works with it. And we have a way to zero our stuff out, so he goes all the way back to the beginning. Sweet. All right, so that's the arms. That's all we had to do for those. So IK handles constraining the pull vector for this, and then constraining the point and the aim for those hydraulic. Definitely complicated. Don't be overwhelmed by it. If you do make a mistake, you can always undo it. You can also go into these things, and there's those constraints. You could just delete them and remake them if you accidentally connect them wrong, okay? All right, so now let's constrain this one. So now we're getting into our own preference of how we want to do this. So as I take this and I rotate this backwards, I could do a constrain orient on this, and what that will do is as my curve rotates, that will also rotate. Okay, so grab one, grab the other, constrain orient, and now if I click this and rotate, it does that, which it obviously shouldn't do. I don't know why that's doing that. Let's try that again. Constrain orient. I only had Z on somehow. So I'll say all of them. Maintain offset is fine. There we go. And now that's going to work. Okay. Now let's say that we wanted something different. No, actually I'm going to leave it at that one. We'll get to different in a bit. So same thing here. I can grab this. Uh-oh. So that's going to be a problem. Like this curve is like really far off. Let me make sure that my rotate is reset. Yes. All right, so I'm going to have to do something with this. I don't think I like that. Let me freeze transform. Nope, it's still messed up. Let's make another joint. I'll just throw that joint up there. I'm going to parent it to this one. And then I'm going to take this curve, shift-click that joint, and parent it to that. And then freeze transform again. Ah, much better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than it was. Let's freeze transform this here. There we go. All right, so that will definitely rotate like that. Okay, I'm not concerned about the joint rotating backwards. I'm just concerned about getting that lined up. And again, this is stuff you just run into. So this, I'm going to parent it to that, and then freeze my transform so I have a good rotation right there. There we go. All right, that will suffice. And the reason it did that is because this one, because it's being constrained, took some of that information of how it's being oriented and how it's being constrained, and it's feeding it to these other curves because they're directly parented. All right, so that still works. So I need to get these to function. Now let's look at this one. This is going to be a custom job. So as I rotate this in this direction, which is the direction I would use to rotate the fins, you can see that this is rotating it in the Y direction. Okay, if I click on the joint and rotate it, it's not rotating in Y, it's rotating in X. Okay, so if I were to use a constraint orient here, it would actually do the opposite. It would do like Y and X and so on. So again, just to show you, I will click that, I will click this, I will constrain orient, and then I will rotate, and then you'll see how it's, definitely not working the way that we were hoping that it would work. It's rotating this crazy direction. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this up a different way. I'm going to click on this. Okay, we said this was X, and I'm going to check the direction too. So this is negative X. If I click on this curve and rotate that this way, that's negative Y. So negative X and negative Y. I'm going to click on the curve, or the joint, click on the X and go to Edit Expressions. We could use, I showed before, we could use a connection editor, the node graph, those kinds of things. Straightforwardest way to do that is just right here. Joint 13 dot rotate X. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. Okay, so we have the object, joint 13, which I should have named. Dot rotate X is going to be equal to what? Now I'm going to click on this curve. That expression is going to disappear. There it goes, because it always does. I'll type it back in. Joint 13 dot rotate X is going to be equal to left flipper dot rotate Y. All the way that I write this is very important. If I do my caps different, it will not work. If this is a uppercase L, that won't work. If this is a capital R, that won't work. Okay, so I'm very aware of the syntax. Joint 13 is easy because it's the same name that shows here. RX, RY, TZ, TY, SX, SY, those are just the short names, lowercase, very easy for us to get. So I'm going to hit create, and then I'll test it. I click, oops, I click E, I rotate, and now we get the flipper moving. Okay. Now, if I click on this one, this is right flipper, the expression goes away. This is joint 14. I'm going to check the directions. So this is X still, okay, and positive is up this time, where negative was up in the other one. And this is Y, positive is up, so it's still equal. So I'm going to go over here to select by expression name, and that way I have this expression, and then I can just add to it. You don't want to have 15 different expressions all individual. You want to have them all in the same area. So I know the syntax from the other one, so I can just type that same exact thing. Oops, not left flipper though, that won't work. Okay, semicolon at the end of each line, that way Maya knows where the lines start and stop. And then edit. Then we scoot this over to this window, we test it out. Okay. Now I will tell you that on the other one that I did, on one of these it was positive and negative. So as one rotated one way, it would actually go the other way. And if that's the case, you just do a multiply times -1, and that will switch it. So if I rotate it left, but the fin goes right, I want to just multiply it times a negative number so they both go the same direction. And you'll kind of see that as you go. Again, why expressions are so great, because it's just so easy just to add those in right there. Okay, so that works. This works. If I grab, not the joint, but this, and rotate, that works. And then I can still grab these, and these still work. Cool. So all those pieces are rigged. That's set up. If I grab this and move it, he should move still. His hands are stuck there. Yep, good. Last thing that I need is his eye controls. So I need some way to control where his eye is looking. So that's what this one's going to do. So his eye group is somewhere inside here. There it is. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to control click the eye, and then I'm going to say, oops, the eye's pivot is way down here. Let me just modify center pivot this real quick. This should be perfectly centered. I believe that's right. I'll rotate it just to verify. Yes, that's good. Okay. There we go. Okay, so click this. That's good. Control click the eye, and then go to constrain aim. Maintain offset on, add. So now I click this, and you can look around. Now I have one more thing that I need to make a control for, which is the iris. So if we open the eye, open the, well, pupil, not the iris, sorry, that, I need to be able to create a control for this, okay? So I can do this any way that I decide I want to do this. On the other one, I used my scale as a way to do that. So as I drug the scale here, it automatically would open and close the eye. So I can do that. I could have it rotated so that I rotate this, it would open or close the eye. Oh, that's lopsided. Let me center pivot that. Huh. It's very weird. Let me freeze transform you. Let me center pivot you. Well, we still lopsided probably. I may have moved a point on accident, whatever. Just ignore that. All right, so I'm going to create a control for this. So I'm just going to isolate these two elements, and that way I can just focus on what they're doing. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll just grab this so I can control that. Now I want my scale X and scale Y to also move. So every time I grab my Z and adjust it, I want X and Y to move too. So I don't end up with this like stretched out or squashed thing. I just want it to be the same. With this one, I'm going to use my node editor. And again, this is just to show you different ways. You can do it any way. So there's the eye control. And if I go to scale here, whoops, there we go. And I say scale Z is going to control scale Y. And then scale Z is also going to control scale X. Those are connected, done. So now if I go here and drag this, all three move under one. Okay, no expression writing, just there it goes. That one. Okay, so this is what's going to control the iris opening. So I'm going to leave it at 1. 1 is the state that it's currently at. And this is probably the most complex one. There's no easy, like, parent orient, whatever up here that we could just click to make these work. We have to do very refined movements. So I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to look at which direction they're going to rotate in. And this could work. You can see that it's actually rotating like 3 of these. That could work, but I'm just going to freeze the transforms on them. That way when I rotate, I only get 1 number. Okay? It makes your life a lot easier. Okay? So it's just rotate Z is what I want to control. So I'm going to rotate Z, edit, and then do set driven. So if you remember from when we talked about that, this is what is getting controlled, and then this is what's going to be the controlling object here. So this is my driver, and the scale Z is going to control the rotate Z. So right now everything is as it should be. If I click on this, this is set to 1. If I grab all of these, this is set to 0. So everything is locked in the starting point. So I'm going to say key. Then I'm going to grab the curve, and I'm going to shrink this down to about there. And just for OCD, we'll just 0.25 that. All right. Then I'm going to take this and rotate that as small as I want this to be. Then I just hit key. Done. Now I grab this and do this. And now that works. So I can get my iris to open and close just by doing that. Now if I decide I want to go a little bit further, maybe I'll put this at 1.25. And then I'll grab all these pieces and then open it up just a hair more. Okay? Now one thing you have to be aware of is if I go to something like this, that will actually stick out of the eye socket. I already know it will. So I can only do this a very little bit. So maybe like that. We'll see. I can always adjust afterwards. Key it again. There we go. So we'll test this out. Okay. And again, the reason we're doing this is because we don't have an equal 1-to-1 relationship. This value is going from 0.25 to 1.25. This is going from negative 37 to positive 10. Okay, so there's no like direct equivalency there. So that's done for that. Let's turn this off. Let's test it out and see if we went too far. And we did, just a smidge too far. You can see it right there. So I'm going to grab my pupil. I'm going to go to my button there. And I'm just going to grab all these and go into the graph editor. And this is where it shows you where all the things are. Even though we haven't set any physical keyframes for it, set driven is essentially a keyframe. So this is the extreme of it opening up. So I'm just going to set this to like, I don't know, 9 maybe. I'll set to 8 just to be extra safe. Whoops. There we go. And so now it doesn't stick out. Yep. Okay, we can't see it doing it, but it is doing it because we're in wireframe. Cool. So now we reset that and we're good. Okay, so now everything has a control. Now we can grab this and move it. We can aim the eye if we need to. We can grab this circle and move it around. We can grab this and move it around. Okay, everything has its controllers. Everything is set up. What else did I want to do to that real quick? I want to lock stuff. So I don't want someone coming into this and screwing things up. I don't want someone like rotating that because that just looks messy. I want this to stay you can just move the translates. So if I go here and I'm going to do the rotates first. I'm just going to right click and say locked and hidden. Gone. Can't see them. I'm going to go to the visibility, locked and hidden. I'm going to go to my scale X and Y. I'm not going to lock these. I'm just going to hide them. Okay. So now someone coming into this will know only thing I can do here is translate and scale. So I can translate this, and if I go to scale, it'll only scale up the one axis. Same thing on here. Test things out if you're not sure. So rotate's not going to do a thing. Scale isn't going to do anything. So it's just those translates. So everything else, locked and hidden. Now I'm doing these one at a time. You can actually do these together. Locked and hidden. This. Locked and hidden. This is just rotate Z. They're both rotate Y, so click that, click that. There we go. I got those, got that. This here, you could scale this, but with these things, the hand control is not in there. Obviously, that doesn't really work too good. But it definitely is a possibility that you could do that, but maybe we don't want someone to do that. So we will lock and hide that one. They do want to rotate it, so if I want my character to do that or to do that, and translate obviously up and down, whatever. You can go AC. Okay, so that is the first level of protection against destroying our carefully crafted rig. The next level is to give them limits. So we don't want certain things to be able to move past a certain distance. This here should not be able to do that. That should be a gimme. So I'm going to go into the attribute editor and go over here to limits, somewhere. Oops, it's on the next one over. Yep, limit information. And I want to limit the rotate Z. So I'm going to rotate this to how far it can go, right there. Okay. This is a negative number, so the most likely this is going to be a minimum. So I'm going to go to my rotate Z, and I'm going to transfer this number. There it goes, and then turn it on. So now you can't rotate it past that point. Same thing the other way. Maybe I don't want to be able to go this far, okay? You can always give it a little bit more leeway and let the animator decide. Sometimes you need it just for emphasis. But let's go that far, and then we'll, oops. I added it before I transferred that information, so I have to unadd it, then rotate it, then send the number over, and then do that. You could have typed it in, but why bother? Okay, there we go. Reset that to 0. Same thing up here. I'll grab this. This is a positive number, or a negative number, so that's going to be in the minus. Maybe it'll go that far. I don't think I'm ever going to animate it that far, but I may. Same thing on this way. It can only go so far here before these collide. That and that. Some of these will not have a limit. Obviously, other ones will. That's my minimum. So this one, it's the minimum on this side. No, it was the minimum on that side, wasn't it? No. And there's my maximum. That. There we go. These don't need minimum and maximums for translate because I may move it wherever I feel like it. So there's no limit there. Same thing here. There's going to be no limit on this. There's no limit on that. There will be a limit here, though. I don't want to limit the translate because I want to be able to do that. But the scale, I don't want it to go any further than those two numbers I set up. So if I go to 0.25 here, that's going to be my scale. So I'll go to scale, minimum, and then my maximum, I'll just type it in 1.25. So now it only goes to those two numbers. Okay, so now they know there's the limit. There's the range that I have there to control that item. Then I'm going to hide all of my IK handles. So show joints, hide those, show IK handles, hide those. And now someone cannot accidentally just grab the IK handles and move it because that would ruin our rig. They can't grab the joints and move them because that would also ruin our rig. And he's done. So that's the rig. Next part comes the animation. I'll show you how I animated mine. How you animate yours is up to you. I just want you to be able to go through and show all the controls. Okay, so I want you to show the iris opening and closing. I want you to show the hydraulics moving. You can see all my stuff here. There we go, see? So that's a box, this is a box. I thought the boxes looked nicer, so I looked at the box. And then these are working. I don't know why they weren't working in the other one. Just double checking. Bounding back, no. Enable overrides, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing in the other one, why it's not colorizing it, but it isn't. Okay. So the way that I set him up to animate is the same way that I animated and set up any one of the other rigs we got. I made a character set. Here's Krabby. And those are where all of his keys are. So as I go through and animate, all I'm doing is pose to pose to pose to pose, and then going in between and then tweaking what all those poses do. So there's him kind of lifting his fin up. And then his eye is going to open up. You can't see it because it's closed or because it's, shaded. And now he's looking around. Notice the pauses here. So he's not just like coming up and then going back and forth. He's looking left, pausing, looking right, pausing, and then doing all the stuff he's doing. There we go. Now even notice as he gets up here, notice the shift in weight. He's tilting to the side. His left elbow or his right elbow is going down. His left elbow is coming up. And that's just me kind of playing with the position of this, just kind of moving it down, and then also taking this one and moving that up. At the same time, I'm grabbing his Krabby controller and rotating this and moving it at the same time that I'm coming over to this arm and making sure that it doesn't do that, because that would be a dead giveaway that this is not a real life thing. Okay, so I set up that pose and then I go to the next pose. So there's one pose. Let me just jump through my poses so you can see it. There's a pose right there. Here he is kind of rocking back a little bit. So last one, that one. And then he lifts himself up. And you'll see the poses aren't like crazy in between all these. And then he kind of squats down, so he's kind of up here for a bit, squats down. And then as he lunges forward, that's when he's lifting his leg and then setting it there. Now I also added, as he's moving, think of the stick animation. As he sits up, that flipper is going to be moving. So as he gets up, the flipper is going to go back a little bit, and then once he reaches the top of his movement, that should kind of like bounce forward a little bit. So I've added that as well as some secondary movement. So if you watch it, when he finally gets up, there it goes. So you can see it's subtle movement, but it will add a lot to your scene. Even when he's doing any of his stuff here, it's not like he just goes from here to there. He kind of like starts down and then comes up. And then when he's up and he wants to get down, he comes up and then goes down. So always try to counterbalance that with that little indicator that something's about to happen. So right here, right? So he lifts his arm up and then he leans back, pushes himself up, leans forward a little bit, adjusts with his other arm, squats down, and then goes forward. Okay? You don't have to make an actual animation of all the pieces doing a story like this one is. You can literally just have him sitting there and lifting his arm, putting it down, lifting his other arm, putting it down, waving his elbow, opening and closing the iris, moving the eye, doing the tail flipping. That would suffice for the assignment. But you want a cool piece, then you do more stuff to it. Like I said, I would add materials to this, different, obviously, if you want them to render quicker. These materials are set up to give me the same look that I just showed. That takes a little bit longer. Same thing with my lighting. I added an HDR here just to give more realistic lighting. The more stuff you do to it, the more real it can look. Obviously, this is going to take a million years to render out, but it'll be really cool once it's done. Okay, so that same rig. And then if you do any hands or arms ever, that's how you do arms on a regular person forever. IK handles, controller, parent things, pull vector constraint, same thing with legs. Any FK stuff you do, that's how you're going to do them. Create a controller, somehow make it work. Anytime you do an eye, that's how you're going to do an eye. Anytime you do a hip or a pelvis thing, that's how you're going to do the pelvis. And then this is, obviously this is just for hydraulic, but any item that you would have. You have a sword and a scabbard, or sheath. Sword and a sheath, that same thing. So the sword lines up with the sheath, it moves together. You don't have to worry about, this kind of setup, okay? There's no locked-in time to how long this has to be. Obviously, we've been through several animations in this class, so just making sure that at least if you don't do the full-blown storyline, some sort of animation, at least the animation should be smooth from one spot to the next. It shouldn't feel rushed. It should make sense. I think that was it. I've also been throwing stuff on layers too, just so that I don't accidentally select the geometry and move it. So the geometry itself is on a layer, so I don't accidentally do that, because that would rake it. So now I can't select him. I can just grab my controllers, oops, and then move those around. I think I also locked my environment too, because I kept selecting that. There we go. Okay. Cameras, so just so you can see the different cameras I have this one. I believe this is the one that I rendered out, yes. And this is 650 frames, which is about 20 seconds, 25 seconds. All right, that's wonderful. This is another one. Eventually, I will render out all these frames, and then I will put them together inside of Premiere, and I will add sound effects, and I will splice it together so that I have, a little bit more of a story going on here. If you know exactly what you want, you can render out just those frames. I could render out, let's say this camera, frame 0 to 500 or 0 to 200. Or if all I'm looking for in this shot is this, I could just render out just that. And here's laying down. Oops, he laughed already. There he is. I like this one, I think, when he lifts up and he gets right into the camera right there. Like, that's a cool shot. And then the long shot. And this one I just want to have just something farther away. Cool. Questions on that yet? No? All right.